All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the second edition of our Cloud Academy platform demo webinar. We'll be doing these weekly for you. I wanted to just quickly introduce myself. My name is Mark Smith. I'm the Director of Sales Engineering here at Cloud Academy. On with me today, I'm joined with Jermaine Hernandez. Jermaine.
Hey everyone, this is Jermaine Hernandez, a sales engineer with Cloud Academy. I am coming to you live from Austin, Texas, and I will be leading the demonstration here shortly, so you'll be hearing a lot more from me.
All right, thanks Jermaine. Appreciate you being on today. If you don't mind going to the next slide, I'll just quickly go over a few things. Again, I want to welcome everyone here. We appreciate your time you're spending with us today. We are going to be taking questions throughout, or we'll be answering the questions, I should say, at the end of the webinar. So you can type those into the chat box and we will go through and answer those at the very end. It is being recorded. We'll have the webinar available on our webinar page for you to go and listen to afterwards. And we really look forward to the time that we have to spend with you here and help educate you a little bit more on what Cloud Academy does, what we solve for, and how we're helping customers each and every day. With that, I'd love to turn it over to Jermaine to walk you through the demo. And you'll hear a little more from me every now and then, but he is going to be doing most of the talking at this point. So take it away, Jermaine.
Phenomenal. Thank you very much, Mark. Yes, please feel encouraged to chime in as you see fit. So for today's demonstration, I thought it would be incredibly valuable to start off with the administrative side first, so we can see what it takes to get this platform up and running within your organization. This is going to also include a quick look into some reporting. From there, we're going to go into the end user experience. I want to be sure that you know exactly what your learners are going to be seeing and experiencing within the platform. Last but certainly not least, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the customization abilities within the platform. So with that, we can get started. So when you first get added, I'm using a fake company within our demo environment, Acme Corporation. But once we're onboarding Acme Corporation, the very first step will be to organize all of our users into various teams. Now, teams can be based on geographic location or job title. In some instances, we've seen a few of our clients using it by organizing by business objectives. So that big project coming up, a particular section that they need to learn about, all organized into one team. Now, for those of you on the call, you may or may not be administrators of the system. What's important to note about administrators is that administrators, in addition to having access to all of the data across the entire organization, will also be responsible for provisioning licenses, organizing members into teams, and assigning training. This is a direct comparison to the roles that you can grant your users within the teams themselves. So within the teams themselves, we're going to see two additional roles: a team manager and a team member. A team member is simply going to be one of your learners. The team manager can be thought of as a pseudo administrator. So what I mean by that is that Byron, for any team that he's listed as a team manager, will be able to make changes to that team, assign training, and view the data for those teams. So this is where we really want to encourage you to empower some of the folks to help you in all of everything that's going to be taking place within the platform. Once we've organized all of our members into various teams, we're ready to go to the next step, which for us here at Cloud Academy is going to be assessments. Now, we believe that robust assessments are integral to any high quality education. So these initial assessments are going to be incredibly valuable because this is going to help us capture a baseline understanding of where skills lie today. That's also going to give us some insight into skill gaps, which can then help guide us in assigning the appropriate training. Don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're starting. So the assessments come in two types: an exam format and a hands-on lab. I'll actually show you what an exam looks like once we're in the end user experience. But one quick description of the labs: we really have three different kinds of labs. What you're going to see through the end user experience is a guided lab. So it'll have screenshots, detailed step-by-step instruction. The assessments, however, are going to be considered a challenge because they are completely unguided. We want our employees to prove that they have these practitioner level skills and can get from A to Z without any help. The third and final lab, which we're not going to get to see, but you can absolutely take a look and see what they're about within our training library, is going to be the general playgrounds. So from here, one of the things that we'll recommend is that you assign, in particular the exams, a level below where you think your team might be. So even though they might already have a fairly good understanding of cloud overall, we can simply assign this basic cloud knowledge evaluation to get that baseline understanding. Once teams have completed the assessments, whether or not you're taking a multi-platform approach, here's where we're going to begin seeing those skill gaps. So if we are testing all of our users across all 3 public cloud vendors, we can see how we're performing across those 3. We can identify some domains that might require a little bit more attention, or even by concept. We're also going to have a skills map indicating where our strengths and weaknesses lie. But perhaps more importantly, both administrators and team managers will have access to the individual users' assessment scores. These can also be very valuable in deciding which training to assign to whom. So somebody, especially when we're considering the outliers when it comes to assessments, so somebody that scored much lower might need a little bit more foundational work within the platform, whereas somebody that got a perfect score might be ready to jump into something more intermediate or advanced.
Yeah, and Jermaine, one thing that I'll add on the pre-assessment piece here, and I know Jermaine is going to launch an actual another assessment here momentarily at the end user review. One of the great things about this and working with our customers is that being able to get that baseline, and then you partner with either myself and Jermaine on the solutions team along with your dedicated CSM. We really align on what Jermaine was talking about, those business objectives. Is it a project? Is it tied to a job role? Is it a certification? But you can actually look now with these pre-assessments. They're relatively quick hitters. So you hit on some of those core domains that are applicable, and that's just because it's an initial exposure. You want to get a quick baseline, but then you could take those results and align. Will help you prescribe what Jermaine is going to go through in a moment. The training to actually attack those skill gaps. But this is great to get that baseline. And in the previous, where you looked at the assessed skills before, just to really clarify, when you see beginner, intermediate, advanced, he's going to talk about skill profiles momentarily, but when you're looking at those, that's the way that we're measuring skills. So it starts with the pre-assessment and then continues on with all the quizzes and exams and the hands-on labs that are validated, and it's broken up beginner, intermediate, advanced. So that's what you were looking at there. But yeah, this is a great way to get that baseline, get the journey started, and see how the team is progressing overall.
Awesome, great point, Mark. Thanks for that. So as Mark mentioned, we're ready to begin seeing what the process looks like to assign training. To be clear, training can be assigned either to an individual user or to an entire team. So I'm going to show you the route for assigning to an entire team. We'll use that same team we were looking at earlier, the Acme partners. Now I'm going to pause here momentarily because you're going to hear me throughout the rest of the demonstration mention 2 phrases: a learning path and a training plan. To ensure we're all on the same page, a learning path is our approach to learning, the learn, validate, and do model. So that's going to be a combination of courses, exams and quizzes, and hands-on labs on a particular topic. The training plan is simply the mechanism to assign or deliver various learning paths to your end users. So the training plan is really just kind of the assignment arm of the platform. So once we're ready to begin prescribing the first initial training, I'll click on this plus sign. Depending on what your needs are, you could very quickly filter by Amazon Web Services, GCP, Azure, or a variety of other topics. You may have also noticed that if you've customized anything, it will be labeled as custom content, which, as I mentioned, we will discuss briefly towards the end. But otherwise, everything else is our out of the box training plans. So perhaps security is at front of mind within Azure. So I'll select this training plan, which brings me to this screen where we can really take into consideration the accountability. So working off of the content duration, administrators or team managers, whomever has a better understanding of what kind of weekly commitment the team can put forward, can adjust this slider and you'll notice the due date updates with me. We can also approach this from the other end and say, we have that really important client project to do on February 1st. What kind of commitment is it going to take in order to meet that deadline? Lastly, the training objectives allow us to communicate the importance and value to all of your employees so they can understand what it is that they're learning and why. Team managers can be included in the assignment of training plans, but by far, I'm going to circle back to that same team. So we're seeing today's date, the deadline that I set based on the end date that I needed. But by far, my favorite part about training plans is the ability to sequence them. So from here, we can go ahead and add an additional training plan. I'll go AWS this time, stick to security. And now, as your learners are making their way through this initial training plan, even if they're completing it well before the deadline, they will seamlessly transition into the very next training plan. So the ability to stack these can really help you maintain a momentum towards learning. In fact, we have some clients that will schedule it out a full calendar year in advance.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I've been with Cloud Academy for over 2.5 years now, and I've seen this progress over time. Where typically, I was actually an instructor-led training before I actually came to Cloud Academy. So in instructor-led training, they're in the class at least. It's difficult to ascertain exactly what they're coming away with outside of the class, and Jermaine's going to get to some of those measurements here in a moment that you get within Cloud Academy. But these training plans are that accountability that's largely missing in online training. So this is the closest you can get. The analogy I give is the closest you can get to actually having someone in a class and having that accountability built into it. Surprisingly enough, the end users that are actually on these training plans with their teams appreciate the fact that there's the accountability driven in. They have all intentions to go in and train and get better and align with the initiatives. But people get busy, things happen, and sometimes it can kind of come back of mind. This is just a great way to keep people on track. They can see where they're kind of stacked up and what they need to do to stay on target with their training plan. But this accountability factor has been proven extremely beneficial with large-scale certification initiatives, just any overall update when it comes to gaining skills in the platform. And it's a great tool to have in place where Jermaine's assigned 2 training plans now, but you can actually have some predictability around here's where we're at now. But by the time we finish these training plan cycles, we predict that we'll have this level of skill in our team, which is an extremely valuable thing when you're talking about predicting milestones and the accountability that goes along with that.
And piggybacking off of your accountability comment, Mark, the training plans, I'd like to add, this is the final piece that I'll share regarding training plans, but we're going to help you track and monitor the progress for all of your individual users. So once a training plan has been assigned, the system itself has automatic nudges that will go out when they fall behind a certain percentage within the training plan. But here we're going to be able to see the individual progress, their last activity, how they're tracking, and we can either send a bulk nudge or an individual nudge. If you click on this nudge button, you'll see that it's coming from you directly to the person. You'll see the stock language that we add, but you can make this your own and gently nudge that user. Individual members will receive a weekly email communicating their individual progress. Team managers will receive a weekly email communicating the entire team's progress. So really trying to help you stay on top of all of that learning. So with all of that out of the way, what does it lead to? What is the big payoff? And for me, that's going to be the reporting. So for starters, I'll introduce you to the analytics area. The analytics are really a consumption metric, a measurement of effort, if you will. This tends to be very popular with folks within the HR department, perhaps even tying some quarterly objectives to the amount of time spent within the platform. So what we're seeing over here is an organizational leaderboard where we're seeing who has consumed the most amount of content. But we can drill down further and say, take an exam, for example. Now we're seeing the leaderboard for any user that has taken any exam. I can take it one final step. And as Mark mentioned, is in particular, if you're working on getting a lot of certifications for a lot of various teams, you can see, especially this certification prep path, the final exam will mirror the certification you'll be taking in real life in terms of number of questions, times. We also have a robust amount of questions within the exams itself. So we recommend that users take it multiple times. This will give them an increased opportunity to view different questions. Ultimately, we're going to see their last score, which if you're lucky enough to be providing vouchers for these examinations, this last score might be a really good indicator of who's ready to receive that voucher. And lastly, regarding the analytics, we can also differentiate by teams. So this can be a fantastic addition to helping you in assigning the right team to the right project. However, this brings me to what really sets Cloud Academy apart, and that's going to be our skill profile. I myself am a bit of a data nerd, so I apologize if I get too excited in this area. But as you might recall, the assessments were helping us capture the baseline understanding of where skills lie today. And as Mark mentioned, the ongoing assessments within the learning paths, the quizzes, the exams, the hands-on labs, as you're completing more and more of those, we're actually tracking their growth across time. This tends to be, it really tends to resonate with the C-level suite of folks because you can see that return on investment that you put into the platform and to your employees. On the assessments, you might have noticed a few core domains. Here, just like in the analytics, we can drill down across platforms. We're going to see a far more exhaustive list of domains. And we'll even be able to differentiate across concepts or different softwares and tools like Kubernetes or Ansible. Just like before within the analytics area, we can drill down into a particular platform. So now we're seeing our top domains within AWS, but we're also seeing our platform domains and how we're performing within each one of those. So now we're seeing our top AWS users within our organization. Well, we can take it one step further and say security. Now we're seeing the platform subdomains or any services, how we're scoring across those. And we're seeing an organizational leaderboard for who is the strongest when it comes to AWS security. And as I mentioned, can help you in assigning the right team to the right project.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts as well, Jermaine, especially working with our customers. You and I get to see this a lot when we go into some of the cadence calls with our customer success group. Being able to drill down and show that demonstrable value, not just I watched a video, so I must have this skill, but ultimately you can be confident in the practitioner level skills because, again, these are being validated not just by the quizzes and the exams, which are adaptive exams, but also validation of hands-on labs, be it guided, unguided lab, which we call a challenge lab, or the playgrounds that we were talking about before. I have a quick aside here too when using this, an actual customer use case where they built in, and everything can be customized, which Jermaine is going to show you here at the very end with Content Engine. But ultimately, we're training their own employees on their stack. So they're building in custom content to train their support staff. And what's happening is they're building custom skills around that, and subsequently it's populating the skill profile. They're actively using that to then go in and determine and predict what support reps will be able to handle how many support tickets per month. And that's really how they're structuring that group. And it's provided an extreme value for them at this point. And honestly, from the first time that I started here, kind of looking at this initially, wasn't necessarily a use case that we had initially thought of. So it's been extremely exciting to kind of see how people are using this. You talked about a couple of these things already, but these are great for quarterly reviews, helping, having your people help pick the right service for your organization, consulting engagements, just a variety of uses for this. This is a valuable metric in the platform, again, which is very, very important to be able to show a return. I talked about that with the instructor led. They sit in the class, maybe they go get a certification, but you really don't necessarily get to see how much they've learned until they're in production. Now you can actually see how they're doing by a skill level, before you actually turn them into a production environment. So this has been an exciting one to see evolve over time, and see how customers are using it in a variety of different ways.
Wholeheartedly agree, Mark. This longitudinal perspective can be really, really valuable. Before I transition to the end user side, I'd like to remind you to please post any questions within the chat area so that we can be sure to answer those. This is also a good time to mention Cloud Academy was originally built for end users. Everything we've seen thus far, all of the enterprise that's wrapped around it, is really wrapped around an already incredible end user experience. So let me show you what I mean. Starting within the end user dashboard, once they log in, they'll land on training plans. So any training plans that have been assigned, they're going to be able to see those here, how they're progressing, along with a team leaderboard. A little bit of gamification to encourage these employees to keep up with one another. One other addition that we recently made to the platform that I think is really, really valuable is we also provided the ability to create a personal training plan. So now users can self-assign any training plan that they're interested in. Perhaps they're interested in learning more about data science, but they're not using it in their day-to-day life. So this will allow them to self-assign any course that they'd like. We also have a mobile app for both iOS and Android. Any assessments that have been assigned, if they're assigned, the assessments tab will populate with those different evaluations or challenges, and I can start them directly from here. The activity area is going to have a bit of a Netflix feel to it. So in particular, you can continue studying anything you've started, but it's also going to have a recommendation engine based on your behaviors and what you're consuming. Ultimately, this brings me to what I think is the most valuable part for your end users, and that's the individual user's skill score. So before, we were seeing that skill profiles from an organizational perspective, that 1,000-foot view. This here is now Michael's opportunity to view his own individual growth and how it compares across the organization. So we have all of the exact same options over on the left: platform, domains, concepts, or tools. And just like before, we can drill down into a particular platform, see how our own skills have grown, in this case within Azure. We're seeing who the top users within our organization when it comes to Azure are, the top 10 at least, and how I rank in comparison. And we can still take it one step further like before. Who are the top users when it comes to security within Azure?
Yeah, I love this as an empowerment aspect to it as well, Jermaine. Being able to take control, but it does get pretty fun to see and hear kind of the feedback on the competition it generates and trying to stay top of the leaderboard as well. So yeah, that gamification aspect of it is certainly proved to get the competitive juices flowing in some of the customers we work with, for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. From there, I'd like to introduce you to the content library. So the content library is public facing. You can come in here and peruse our content at your leisure. I'll also point out one of my favorite things about working at Cloud Academy is how transparent we are around the upcoming training. So if you click on this upcoming training, you can pull up and see what was just released or see what's coming down the pipeline, broken down by those categories that we're about to see over back in the content library. So as I mentioned, all of the content is organized into various categories. So you're going to see all 3 public cloud vendors, including Alibaba. We're also going to have a few areas of emerging tech and things like DevOps, security. So once you've selected a category, you'll then be able to see all of the different learning activities that we have that support that category. I'm going to filter into the learning paths. And because we've been talking about it, I'm going to pick a certification path. So right now, courses, exams, and quizzes can be consumed offline. So in the event that anybody's actually commuting nowadays, you can send these directly to your phone. We're also going to communicate difficulty, average duration. It can be tied to CPE credits, and will also provide a certificate of excellence upon completion that they can, a button will magically appear here that will allow them to directly add it to LinkedIn. Under the description, we're going to see some high-level details, including learning objectives. But if we keep scrolling down, we're going to see the different learning path steps. And if you go to the very bottom, you'll be able to see a change log so you can see what was updated and when. So I'm going to jump into a course here. So the courses themselves, we know that your end users, nobody for that matter, really wants to receive a 2-hour video and be expected to view it in one sitting. So instead, what we've done is we've taken that human action into account, and we've broken all of these courses down into smaller, more bite-sized, more easily consumable modules, which also allow us to better time how much time we can devote to learning. Perhaps when we have a 30-minute window that we weren't expecting, how far can we get in those 30 minutes? The infamous Stuart Scott is on there. We can speed this up or slow it down. But this ultimately brings me to the hands-on labs. So this is going to be the other differentiator for us here at Cloud Academy. So as you might recall, the challenge labs were unguided. This is going to be a guided lab. So this is going to include screenshots even for logging in. You can see over on the left all of the Cloud Academy provided credentials and the different lab steps that you'll be completing. So I'm going to open this environment. We simply need to copy and paste the username, copy and paste the password. And just like that, you've spun up your own instance within an AWS Management Console. And it bears repeating, this is a Cloud Academy provisioned access to the AWS Management Console. We do bridge the connection between the platform and the lab. So as you're making your way through various steps, you're going to come across validation checks. Once you have to complete something within the lab, you're going to come across these validation checks that will either confirm or deny if you successfully completed what was expected on this page. Nobody really wants to get to step number 7 to realize that they messed up at step number 2 and they need to go all the way back and rework. Now, the final aspect that I want to oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Jermaine. One other thing on these labs, that was an update we made, and I think it's important to note that we take the feedback from customers that we work with, and that validation steps. Again, we used to have those built all in at the back end of these guided labs, again, Jermaine mentioned the challenge labs, which are meant to have you go through the entire process with those screenshots and validate it, at the very end. But that's separated out from what we're talking about here. So what you mentioned is true. That was an implementation or an improvement we made based on some customer feedback. On these guided labs, we want to make sure the validations are built in within those steps. So that way, like Jermaine said, you get to the very end, only to realize that you missed something in step 2, have to go back and rework the entire thing. So this provides a much better user experience. And again, it doesn't mean, if you've seen some lab environments before, you just kind of have people click through. You're actually having to validate what you're doing. So you're going to be able to see on the analytics, which he showed you before, the number of times people have started it, completed it, etc. But also that's going to feed once they validate into the skill profile. So yeah, I just wanted to make quick mention of how that improvement actually came about, and just tied into the fact that we're always listening to suggestions, from our customers for things like this.
Yeah, that's a great point. We definitely want to make sure that the end users are happy in their experience. So the final piece that I'll introduce you to from the end user experience is going to be the ongoing assessment. So you might recall we talked about a pre-assessment to capture the baseline understanding of where skills lie. This is the kind of assessment that they will encounter in various steps across different learning paths. In particular, as a side note, if this is a certification path, it will mirror, as I mentioned, the real-world exam in terms of time and questions. And don't forget that we do have a large amount of questions, so we encourage users to take it multiple times. So once I'm ready, I'm going to start the assessment. We're going to go question by question, select 1, select 2, select 3. But by far, one of my favorite parts about this entire platform is that we have a brilliant data science team that implemented the item response theory to this part of the platform. What the item response theory tells us is that as you answer, say, the first 5 questions, if all 5 are correct, then the next set of 5 questions will increase in difficulty. But if I didn't get a single one correct, the next 5 questions will decrease in difficulty. So this ongoing assessment, this ongoing validation is what's feeding directly into the skill profiles along with the hands-on labs. We also recommend that end users skip any questions that they don't know the answer to. We don't want the platform to assume knowledge that they don't have. We will provide them an opportunity to revisit any skipped questions. But this after exam report is something very similar to what you'll see after a lab. So we're going to communicate to you all of the assessed skills, how our individual score changed. We can directly improve our score if we know that we're stronger in a particular domain or browse training directly related to it. So just to give you a baseline understanding, now that we understand how we're scoring across different domains for AWS, that's feeding upwards into our overall AWS score, which is then feeding into our overall skill score. So that's how these skills are rolled up into one. And lastly, down towards the bottom, we're going to come across all of the correct answers for right, wrong, or skipped questions. We're going to provide an explanation, and where appropriate, we'll be linking to external documentation for further learning. So that is the
Time this back in, Jermaine, to sorry, I couldn't come off of mute. Sorry, Jermaine. Tying this back into what you were showing in the analytics and having that insight into the number of times people have taken the exam and passed it. And you talked and spoke to this perfectly, is best practice to go in and do it multiple times. If you get an answer incorrect, it increases the chances you'll see it on the next iteration. And then if you get it correct, it doesn't mean you won't see it, but it greatly decreases those chances. So we've heard people going through these exams, 6 to 7 times before they start seeing more repetitive questions, which is phenomenal when it comes to, especially for studying for a certification as well.
Yeah, that's very true. And we also typically hear from some learners come back and tell us that our exams are even harder than the real certifications. It's better to be over prepared, I think.
Yeah, good point.
So that ultimately brings me to customization. So customization happens within what we call the content engine. The content engine is going to allow you to really customize, make it your own, any learning experience or absolutely anything that you've seen thus far through the demo. So a very common use case is that we have some clients that are uploading their security document that they want all employees to read. They're creating questions against it, throwing it into an exam, and then adding that exam to a custom learning path. I'm going to show you how to create or modify a learning path, but I did want to point out a reminder of what Mark brought up earlier, that these labs can be customized and really made your own, even down to mirroring your own stack. So when we are customizing any content, we have the option to either build it from scratch. You may already have a ton of materials that you want to add into the system, or you can clone any of our existing paths. Let's select this AZ204. So before we saw the front end, now you're seeing the back end. So we can update the landing page description and whatnot. I'm going to add a title here to be sure it lets me continue. Because what I really want you to see here is that the second step, here is where we really take control of what is being learned within this course. So we can remove any courses, labs, exams that are not pertinent. We can scroll to the bottom and add additional steps. So as I mentioned, you might have a security document that you want all employees to read. You created a custom exam because you wanted them to read it, and you customize a hands-on lab. So now from here, we can edit the order and be sure that they're coming across these when we'd like them to. Now, lastly, we will communicate, especially if you've duplicated, any skills that are tied to that learning path. However, based on your edits, you can also add additional skills and even add your own unique business objectives or skills that you'd like to track over here. And just like that, we have customized a learning path.
And this is the same. This is the same tool that our content team is using. So essentially, you're on the back end of Cloud Academy at this point. When it does come to those custom skills that Jermaine was talking about, so remember, skill profiles are fed by exams, quizzes, and labs. So when you go into and customize or create questions, you can actually tie a custom skill to those. And every question can have a difficulty level all the way rolling up into the exam having a difficulty level. But again, multiple custom skills could be tied to that, including the labs. And all those would feed into a custom node there on your skill profile. So we talked about assessments earlier. So you saw the ones that we have out of the box, including the training plans that are out of the box. All that can be customized. So if you want to assess somebody or do a pre-assessment on Kubernetes, we can customize that and make it available for you to assign out. So this is completely revolutionary. This is a totally unique tool to Cloud Academy, and one that, again, there's a variety of ways that our customers are using these, and building their own labs and training on their own stack. But this is something that is really exciting. And again, we love to kind of walk our users through this. There's a lot of support to help you use it and maximize it, make sure you get the most out of it. But this is what I refer to commonly as the bow on top of everything. This is, or the icing on the cake, however you want to put it. I could come up with a million different analogies, but this is a great addition, to the platform there.
The cherry on top, if you will.
There you go. We can keep going. Let's do this all day.
Yeah, it's almost lunchtime, so that's why the food analogies are really resonating with me. Yeah, but with that, please don't forget to add in any questions you have into the chat area.
Yeah,
we
I
have
was
any
taking a
questions?
look, Jermaine. There was only one question, and I'll be happy to answer it. It was someone had said we mentioned customer success. I did that pretty early on, and they're just asking what a implementation actually looks like. So I'll be happy to talk to this very briefly. Our customer success team is an X factor, right? So you do get a dedicated customer success manager. One of the things that we want to do is we're not just going to hand you the keys and then say good luck, have fun, do the best you can with it. We want to actually walk you through an implementation that is going to be beneficial for your organization, and every customer is different. We do have an onboarding, a flow that we work through, but we customize that according to what your needs are. So Jermaine talked about setting up teams, et cetera, going all through all that. A couple of the things that we'll do is identify, make sure your users are onboarded either through SSO or through an API, whatever that may be. We can put them into their teams. We will help with pre-launch and kind of going through and training your end users on the Cloud Academy platform. We can help align on some of your expectations. In addition to that, Jermaine talked about the team managers, and administrators on the platform. We're going to talk to them and tell them exactly how they can use those management tools, how they can roll out training plans or assessments, how they can monitor the skill profiles throughout. So this is a completely a custom process to walk people through and answer any questions they have along the way. The customer success team will then get you forward to launch, and there'll be cadence meeting set. So usually what we find is, listen, we do this for anywhere from 10 people in an account up to 20,000 people. So this is again, this process can be completely tailored to what fits your organization. But they'll set cadence meetings with you. You'll establish those KPIs. They'll align with you. They could invite someone like myself or Jermaine, including people from our product or our content team, because we do like to talk about some of the future status of the platform and improvements that we're going to make. And it's continued to follow it all the way throughout the process. And again, some of these are a lot are multi-year engagements, so that process is kind of followed through. But at minimum, you can expect quarterly business reviews, again, aligning on those KPIs and then adjusting if there's additional KPIs that you want to set for the following quarter. So then implementation is there's a playbook for it, but again, we customize it according to the needs of every specific organization. That was a great question. Thank you for asking that. That actually wraps up the webinar for the day. Jermaine, thank you so much for walking through the platform. I really appreciate that. I want to remind everyone, you'll get a survey at the end of the webinar. It'll be emailed to you. We would greatly appreciate if you could go through and fill that out. The webinar has been recorded. It'll be available on the Cloud Academy webinar page. In addition, please join our LinkedIn community. We'd love to have you on there. We share some exciting updates. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to talk with you. Got some contact information for both of us up there. Additionally, if there's a opportunity that you'd like to take a look at a pilot, Jermaine or myself would run those for you too. So again, thank you so much for your time, everyone. We greatly appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And we will talk to you soon. Thanks again, Jermaine.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.
All right, bye, everyone.